Hi, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to reading Aristotle's Politics. We left off, we were doing chapter 2, book 2, which focuses on Aristotle's critique of Plato, particularly Plato's Republic. It was dealing with the question of a critique that Plato, in his attempt to define the best city as a unity, a complete unity, which Aristotle says, no, that's not a good city. I mean, that's an inappropriate understanding of the city, or even justice for the city, because the city is a composite of is not a unity, but it's a composite of entities, and therefore it's not a homogeneous concept, but a heterogeneous concept, and therefore to seek a excessive unity would actually undo the thing that it's doing. So let us go now from that criticism to something else. Let's look at chapter 3. But even if it is best for the community Carnoia to be as far as possible in unity, even this does not appear to be proved by the argument that it will follow if all says mine and not mine at the same time. Like that's very public. Everyone says everything is mine, not mine. At the same. For Socrates supposes this is an indication of the city being completely one. For all has a double sense. If it meant each individually, perhaps this would be closer to what Socrates wants to do, for each will speak of the same boy as his own son, and the same woman as his own wife, and similarly with regard to property and indeed everything that comes his way. But those who have wives and children are common will not speak of this way, but as all collectively and not individually. And similarly, with respect to property. Okay, I'm getting a hoarse throat for some reason. Okay. In other words, in other words, but those who have wives in common will not speak of this way, but as all collectively and not individually. And similarly, with respect to all property, as all collectively and not individually. It is evident then that a certain fallacy is involved in the phrase all says. Indeed, the double sense of all, both odd and even, produces contentious syllogisms in the argument as well. Let's see what he says here. He refers to his own essay on sophistic refutation. In other words, the way Socrates sets this up is not a fair discussion of it's kind of a trick. He seems to suggest it's sophistic. It's not it is not really a useful in that sense. Very interesting criticism of Plato. Therefore, that all says the same thing is in one way beautiful, fine, though impossible. While in another way, it is not even productive of concord. Now he's saying it's at one level it may be beautiful to say this, but it's impossible. In other words, it's not something that's in the realm of possibility. That's one way. But it's also to say that all is everything in mind is not also productive of concord. And by concord means peace and fellow feeling towards concordness. Furthermore, the formula is harmful in another way. So this is where it's not productive to concord. So okay, we had a little problem. That's beep beep beep. uh, what belongs in common to most people is accordingly the least care. This is the tragedy of the commons, classic concept. Aristotle Aristotle at first suggests another issue. In other words, the formula is a harmful. In other words, and he's going to say what belongs in common to most people gets the least care. And, this is the famous concept of the tragedy of the commons. That in the sense that what's everything that we own collectively, we care the least about. He says, let's continue. They take care they take thought for their own things above all, and less about the things in common, or only so much as it falls to each individually. So, therefore, in other words, it's a very important thing. It's again, this church. We don't. If we all, we have, if we share something that we all share in common, um, but we don't have kind of direct responsibility for it, we kind of don't give a damn about it. It doesn't really. We don't invest in it. We don't do things in it. For the things we ourselves partake in it that belong to us, we care much for. Now, again, this is what Plato's. I mean, in one sense, Plato's criticism is that Plato wants people to care more for the argue that care more for the city than their own selves. Aristotle says that's kind of unreasonable in that sense. This is demanding too much. Um, uh, uh, what you should do is that you should have it so that I through caring for your own, and I think this is what Plato wants to do too. He understands that people care for their own, so therefore everything has to be one's own. Aristotle's point is that that's not possible, right? And the danger of making everything common leads to would argue not to the caring of it, but rather not the not caring of it or not paying enough specific attention to it, concern for it, and therefore may actually be. This is why it's harmful in a sense. In other words, we pay more attention to this, as he says, only so much as it falls to us individually, the common things that fall to us. For apart from other things, they slight them on the grounds that someone else is taking care thought for them. Just as in household service, many attendants sometimes do a worse job than fewer. In other words, exactly, this is a very big problem. When there's there's that, the other guy's doing it, and then what happens is things fall through. Okay, this is the big thing. If you have lots of in household governing of a household, taking care of a household, if there's a lot of servants, then what happens is a situation can happen where everyone thinks, oh, someone else is doing it, and therefore nobody does it. Whereas if you have fewer servants, the fewer servants will know, oh, we got this to do. So that they realize what has to be done and the scene has to be done. It doesn't fall through the cracks as much, you say. Each of the citizens come to have 1,000 sons, though not as an individual, but each in the similar fashion, the son of any of them. Hence, all will slight them in the same fashion. Instead of, in other words, he says it's going to not produce this. In other words, 1,000 sons. Every citizen has 1,000 sons, but not, you know. And what's going to happen is they're going to slight them. They're not going to, it's not going to produce the brotherly love and the thing that Plato thinks it will. He suggests. Further, each says mine of a citizen who is acting well or ill in this sense, that he is one of a certain number. Each really says mine or his, meaning by this every individual of the 1,000 or however many the city has. And even when he is in doubt, for it is unclear who has happened to have offspring. This is true. This is or whatever any have survived, or whether any have survived. In other words, you don't really. If you haven't seen your son, if the children are not in the household and you don't see them, they're raised over here. And the question is, do you really know it's your son? That's the problem of human sexuality. A man is not certain The woman is that it's her son. She bears it, right? She bears the child, but the husband, he might have, might have done the deed, but is the deed the deed, right? This is the infamous cases of babies being born to fathers who want the father, right? And they don't know that, right? Um, oh my God, which is not uncommon in that sense. The argument goes. So therefore, this is a problem in this sense. The question of the men don't have a level of certainty about this, and it's even more uncertain in this ideal situation where everyone is a child. And then what happens is that there's going to be a question of, well, is it mine or is it his? Right? That's what he's saying here at this level. Therefore, did he have any children, and did any really survive? He doesn't know, right? Yet, which is superior? For each of 2,000 or 10,000 individuals the same mind and address the same thing, or rather, the way they say mine in cities now. That was my children. Which is superior? Now he goes. This is a question he's going to ask. Is this superior to this? He goes. Now, from the same person is addressed as for now, the same person is addressed as a son by one, and by another as a brother, by another as a cousin, or according to some other sort of kinship. But this is how it's done presently, right? Whether the blood or relation and connected by marriage. In the first instance of himself and that of his own. And further along describes him as clansman or tribesman, right? It is better indeed to have a cousin of one own than a son in the sense indicated. In other words, the idea that, in other words, by the sense indicated by Plato or Socrates' account, this idea that everyone's son. No. It's in other words, there's more of your own in having the cousin than that. The argument he says here. So therefore, the natural way, the way it's done now, it has a stronger sense of this is mine, this is that, and that has a more sense of care and obligation than the proposed way of Socrates. Right now, let's move myself here and let's go over here. Actually, though, it is impossible to avoid having some suspicion, right? Who their brothers and sons or fathers and mothers really are, for they will of necessity find proof of this in the similarities that occur between children and their parents. So in other words, it's going to be that it's in this kind of convoluted system that's given in Plato's Republic. It ain't going to work because eventually someone's going to realize, well, that's really my parent. These are my parents, and therefore these are my real parents, and those other aren't. So therefore, because of similarities in that sense, right, that occur between the parent and children, and what's going to happen is that they will start giving more attention to their own than those who they don't really believe their own, right? So in other words, you can't escape natural affection. This is the point. Aristotle here is saying that Plato does not understand biology, but there is that biological creatures have a biological inclination to their own, to one's own kin, one's own family, one's own thing, and that therefore this is whether, in other words, these blood relations, either by connections of marriage, are going to be more powerful than an abstract conception of that everyone's brother. Okay, the model that he creates here. Indeed, some of those who have written on accounts of travel assert that this in fact happens. Now, this is the travels. I'm going to stop here. This is 9. I'll talk about this. This is a fan reference to a geographer, Exodus of Krenos, and also Herodotus talks about this problem, right? The differentiation and difference, and the similarity here that these are going to happen this way. For they say that some inhabitants of the Upper Libya have women in common, yet the children they bear are distinguishable according to their similarities. There are some women and some females of other animals, such as horses and cattle, that are particularly inclined by nature to produce offspring similar to their parents, like the mare at Farless, called the Just. Right? They're going to be like some, there are some women and some females of other animals. They are going to produce child just like their parents. In other words, there's biological genetic similarities, certain similarities of kind, similarities of emergence. This is going to be noticeable. Well, okay, this is where the genetics of Aristotle uh, 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 criticizes the position of Plato's here and Plato's critique. Let's stop here, and um, if you have any questions or concerns, please put it there. Aristotle wrote a lot of stuff on the biology and the biological animals, and he has a book called The History of Animals, The Movement of Animals. Aristotle very much, his politics is as much resting on his understanding of biology in a sense that than on abstract logic. He will take his understanding of 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 biology and the animals, and as we saw in chapter 2 of book 1, um, about showing how bees and other animals are political, and that man, being a political animal, shares certain traits in common with all political animals. It is the man is the most of the political animals, right? Here again in this chapter, we get a good account of that, how the reality of human biology and the nature of this is going to overpower and be powerful instinct of connecting, making common what is ours, right? Whereas a kind of artificial logic attempt to do this is not going to be as powerful. In other words, this concoction of everyone in common that Plato, Socrates presents, and Aristotle's criticizing this view. Oh, so if you have any uh, comments or questions, please put it below, and when I see them, I'll answer them. If you liked it, liked it. In other words, if you didn't like it, don't like it, and say why, what's wrong. Um, um, Please share with friends and on social media. Subscribe if you want to get more things. Subscribe. Encourage others to subscribe, please. This is let's build. I would like to build the channel a little bit. If you wish to help to contribute the channel, you can do so through Subscribestar or Patreon. I understand this is by this I mean just a little bit of small. You do this help. That means that I'll be able to I spend time. It takes time to do this out of my day. I could be doing other things. It's hard to do it, and I mean it's not hard to do. What it is, it's just have the discipline to spend time. But also helping you help me buy my books. Okay, so buy some new books on these things. I always need some help, as inflation is killing me, and I'd rather and it's doing things. Of course, you can do Patreon. I understand that. I'm not that active on it. I admit that. People, I've only one person, I think two people doing it, and it's not, they're not doing any big money. So I'm not, you know, I wish I had patrons, that gave me some money. I could do more. But the other way you can help me is you can buy my new Lulu book. Of course, you can buy my other books that I've mentioned, my Aristotle's books, but of course, I don't get them. That doesn't, I don't get the money directly. But if you buy this, it will, I will get it. Okay, this is and this is useful for people reading the politics right now. It is a study guide. It's a workbook. It's a notebook on Aristotle's politics. It's a notebook on Aristotle's politics. A workbook. It's like Cliff's Notes. Um, you're probably tired of me saying this. I'm sorry. This is the advertising. It is in case someone hasn't seen it for the first time, and probably I should stop. You're probably saying, "Oh, but you've said this too many times already." Okay, I understand. So there, it's useful. It's a guideline. It helps you go through it. Um, And what else do I have to say? You can follow me on social media. The information is below. I said that. I should have said it earlier. So there. Okay. Have a good day. We'll see you next time, and we'll do chapter 4. Take care. Bye bye.